Welcome, everybody, to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I am your host, Jason Verlinde. We've got John Roundhouse playing in the background. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sitting here at my house on Christmas Day. I'm realizing how important the Fretboard Journal community is to me and to so many of you. And I know it's been a little while since we released our last episode, and I figured, why not get an episode out the door today? And then on Friday, we're going to have a whole nother episode as well. Doubleheader, the hits keep coming. So the reason I had a little gap between episodes there is because we have just been absolutely slammed. We've got our new 55th issue mailing to everybody right now. That's going to be showing up in everyone's mailbox over the next week or two, depending on where you live. I can't wait for everyone to finally see that issue. And then we've got a new book celebrating the world of Luthier. Jamie Etherington, one of our fearless contributors, interviewed dozens of Luthiers about the tool that means the most to them, and we turned it into a hardcover book. I'll include a link to that in the show notes if anybody wants to nab that. We're not doing a Kickstarter or anything, but we are doing a limited run of this book, and you can reserve your copy now at fretboardjournal.com. So I've got all that stuff going on. We've got a Fretboard Summit happening in August to plan and a whole bunch of other surprises. But I wanted to share with you all this interview that I did a month or two ago with Tyson, Soth, a luthier based in Spokane, Washington. It's a heartwarming story. I felt like it's a good time to share it. Tyson makes absolutely exquisite guitars. He's a really cool guy. I met him at the Fretboard Summit a year or two ago, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsors, Peghead Nation. You can get your first month free or $20 off of any annual subscription with the promo code FRETBOARD when you check out. This is an instruction portal for pretty much every acoustic instrument you can think of, certainly every instrument that we celebrate in our pages. What I love about Peghead Nation is I'm the kind of guy who signs up for private guitar classes and then dreads going back the next week because I haven't practiced enough. With Peghead Nation, you can kind of practice at your own pace. You can jump around a little bit. I have thoroughly loved all of the classes. I've also loved that so many of their instructors are featured in the Fretboard Journal itself. It's just sort of like feels like an extension of our family. Again, thanks to Peghead Nation for sponsoring the show. We are also brought to you by Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar. If you go over to their YouTube right now, they've got another deep dive into the world of Japanese electric guitars. I love this store. I love hanging out there. They're here in Seattle, Washington. It's a truly cool place, and they have a great repair shop right next door to their main showroom. Stringjoy Strings is once again offering you all 10% off your first order at stringjoy.com with the promo code FRETBOARD. And last but definitely not least, we have a Patreon. So if you love the show, maybe you love the show and you love our podcast offerings, but you really don't want to read a quarterly magazine, it's a great way to support what I do. It's a great way to get bonus content. I'm starting to do more of my creative writing over there and sharing my little soapbox rants and all sorts of other stuff. I'll include a link in the show notes if anyone is so inclined. Again, today's guest is Spokane-based luthier Tyson Soth. An incredible guy. We had a blast talking. And stay tuned on Friday. I'll have another episode for you all. I got to keep you all busy during this holiday season. We're all in this together. I'm here for you. Thanks as always for tuning in. Tyson, we met at the Fretboard Summit. We've met at LeConner. Been great over the last few years to get to know you. And I think for most folks, they're probably hearing about you for the first time, or they've maybe heard about you online, but this is the first interview they've listened to with you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are?
Okay. I just build alone generally in my little shop in Spokane Valley, Washington. I apprenticed under Joel Stair. We met just randomly, basically, and I saw his shop and said, I want to do that. I had a background in woodworking already.
Are you a Spokane lifelong resident?
No, I was born in Spokane, but my childhood first in Japan and then in Alaska, and I ended up back in Spokane kind of randomly around the time I was about to turn 19.
Okay.
Back here ever since.
And then was it a life of woodworking until you found Joel, or what?
No, I just did woodworking as like a hobby. I mean, I grew up with a grandpa who could do anything and had a little passion for woodworking. He built it, the family cabin up on Lake Chelan. He just bought a plot of land and built a really nice cabin that sometimes slept 20 people. A little cabin or anything, but and I was always the one grandchild that was looking over his shoulder all the time and wanted to know how to use this tool and that tool and the other tool.
Yeah.
And then I did some cabinet making just for fun at Fairchild Air Force Base. They have a really good wood hobby shop, and they actually offer classes where you get a certificate at the end. So,
Were you in the Air Force?
no, my dad
Okay.
ended up in Japan and Alaska.
Okay, that's why you're traveling the world. Yeah.
Just liked woodworking, so I pursued that. Cabinet making, I made myself a really nice maple dresser and a nightstand, and just drew up my own plans and did that kind of stuff, and learned how to use all those more like industrial wood shop tools.
Yeah. And were you a lifelong guitarist?
No. I did always like guitars, but I didn't have much of an aptitude for it. I think back on it, and I really loved that riff in the that Living Color song. I can't remember what it's
Cult of Personality, yeah.
and so I went out and I got myself a Dean Firecrackle electric guitar, but then I didn't think to get an amp or acoustic, and it never got very far. But I did take lessons for a while, but I don't know, I had too much else going on, and I never really adopted it as something that I did on the regular.
Yeah. I see a NoFX sticker behind you and old snowboards. Was this a like punk rock indie generation thing growing up?
I had a very eclectic musical background. I'm wearing my NoFX shirt too.
Oh yeah.
Randomly. I didn't think about the fact that I had a banner behind me, but yeah, I love NoFX, and I've seen them a couple times. In concert, I've moshed my way through a couple of their shows. But yeah, like my high school taste in music was all over the place. A lot of Europop. I also liked. I remember I listened to a lot of the Scorpions and I don't know. At work, I was always listening to Tears for Fears and just all over it was really all over the place. The Cure was a huge influence. I was a Depeche Mode junkie, which is odd for guitar.
Yeah, not known for their guitar riffs. What were the circumstances of you running into Joel? I mean, there's not a lot of there aren't a ton of luthiers in the general Spokane area that I know of. There's some in Idaho and, scattered about. But what were the circumstances of you running into him and then sort of deciding to apprentice with him?
So one of his first cousins is one of my best friends, and my best friend, his cousin's name is Rob, and his van broke down in Joel's, and Rob called me up and said, "I need help with the van." So, excuse me, I would go out. I went out there and I helped him sort out the starter motor problem, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my cousin makes guitars," and I was like. And so I went in, she gave me a tour of the shop, and I was just like, this is the perfect job. And I bugged him for a couple of years about it. Mostly my friend, not so much Joel, about, hey man, I really wanted like apprentice or, spend some time in that shop. And finally, Rob's just like, just call Joel or send him an email. So I did, and I sent him an email saying, I'd like to apprentice. I don't just want to like, be a student or something like that. I want to start coming in once, twice a week. I'll come in when I say I'm gonna, and I'll work my butt off in your shop. And Joel said, okay. We met up, hit it off right off the bat. And one of the first things he did was hand me a back set that was probably worth at least $500 and said, thicknesses for me. So I took it and shoved it in the overhead sander and worked it down. And from then on, I had my hands all over his guitars for about over a year. And he said, you really should start at least thinking about making your own guitar. And I was like, really already? And so I started in on it, and that's where the story gets more interesting. This is about halfway through that guitar. At that point, I was still just trying to learn how to do fine woodworking and not really thinking ahead. At the time, I had a desk job, making online learning content for the Kalispell tribe of Indians. I did basically all of their online learning, running the website, making the curriculum, all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of getting burned out on sitting behind a desk a lot. And then around halfway through that guitar, my first guitar build, my youngest child came down with a bunch of weird pain and couldn't sleep at night because of the pain. They'd have to get up and walk around, walk off the pain when they're trying to go to sleep. And we started bringing them into the doctors, and the doctor was saying, oh, maybe they'll need physical therapy. And so we got them in line to get into physical therapy, and it was going to be about a month out. And it started to be every night. They couldn't sleep because of the pain. It was not a normal behavior whatsoever. And after myself and their mother going in and bugging doctors over and over again, I finally went in and I just said, you need to draw some blood and figure out what's going on. And they reluctantly did. And then I got a call that everything was fine. This was on a Friday night. They're like, oh, the blood looks fine. And I was losing my mind. I went up to my cabin to I just left work early that day and went up to my cabin to kind of blow out some steam. Lee was at the theater with their friends. And so I wasn't worried about that. And a couple hours later, I got a call from a nurse that said, you need to take your kiddo to the ER right now, because they had misread the blood.
Oh my God.
And ended up their white blood cells were way off the charts. And so I went and picked up Lee from the theater and hauled him to the Sacred Heart ER, and they went right into the children's ER part. And within an hour, we found out that Lee had leukemia. And so that ended up being about 6 months in the hospital, the most worst experience anyone could ever imagine. The doctor later told us that there was like 3 different occasions where they thought that Lee wouldn't make it through the night, but miraculously they did. But we just moved in. I designed they only make enough room for one parent really to crash at the hospital, but I designed a little device that butted up against that folded up into a little suitcase thing, and it would turn into a bed extension. And then we brought in our own like mattress topper, and her mom and I just stayed there full time. My work let me work from the hospital, so I didn't have to worry about any kind of income issues or whatever. And we just moved in for almost 5 months, or a little over 5 months, in the Spokane's Children's Hospital.
Wow.
There, I decided to change jobs.
Okay. Wow. 5 months living out of a hospital, worried sick about your kid.
Treatments they have to do for this kind of leukemia is pretty devastating. They have to make it so you have no immunity to anything. So the common cold, any kind of fungus or virus or anything can just take you out.
Oh, wow. How long ago was this?
This is 2018, the second half of 2018. Lee turned 13 in the hospital.
Lee's doing okay now?
They're 20 years old almost. Well, just
Amazing.
so that's we're really the kind of people that experience the best kind of after cancer kind of things, because they're talking about things like cured after about 5 months.
That's amazing.
So I just reorganized all my priorities, and I said I want to build myself a shop and work from home.
Was it both a life is short, I'm not happy doing a desk job thing, as well as a necessity thing of like, I probably have to be a full-time nurse as well, and having a workshop next to my house makes sense?
Well, the aftercare wasn't too great after the first year or so, and it was just more about wanting to be around, and commuting and sitting behind a desk and then commuting home. My job required about an hour commute each way a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just like, I just can't anymore. And so now I just have a real low paying job that I enjoy myself and work in my slippers if I want to.
So you decided to become a full-time luthier with a half a guitar under your belt?
Pretty much. I would sneak out and work on the guitar. This was pre-COVID, but it was still really dangerous to go out. Yeah. I would wear a mask when I went out a lot of times to protect myself from bringing something to the hospital. And so, I just decided I wanted to do something I wanted to do. And Joel already had told me that I had a knack for this that he hadn't seen from any of his other apprentices or students. Just how quick I picked stuff up and how just fluid it was for me to move on to the next thing. I'd already done a lot on his guitars by that point, because I didn't just jump right into building my first one. My first guitar, I'm totally comfortable taking it to a show. It doesn't look like a first guitar.
Sure.
And so I just went into it, just dove into it, and I built 4 more guitars back to back to back right after that, and that was before I let anyone know I was building guitars.
Yeah.
That first Fretboard Summit show in Chicago was the first time anyone even saw any of my guitars. They all were built basically in secret.
Incredible. Where are you at now? How many guitars under your belt?
I believe I just wrapped up number 10 not too long ago. And I've been taking a little bit of a break as of late, where I've been trying to get caught up on a bunch of honeydew stuff and just junk I had laying around that I wanted to get through.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching. I've been teaching my son. He's about halfway through his first guitar.
Wow. That's got to feel good.
Yeah, that's fun. It was fun that he had the interest and approached me and said, I want to make a guitar. I said, well, let's do it. And then I have another friend I've been teaching her how to build a guitar, and it's well on its way too.
You taking all of Joel's future apprentices?
Yeah, he hasn't been doing apprentices so much. He just does students.
Okay. How has, since you're sort of at the first, 10 guitars is a lot, but it's still sort of beginning, early stages. Like, how has your design philosophy, aesthetic evolved over the course of those 10 guitars, if it has?
I'm always trying to push things. I right from the get-go, I would be like, why hasn't someone done this? I'll ask Joel, and he'll say, I don't know, and no one's ever asked me. I'm going to do it. I went ahead and did that double back bevel that I've never seen anyone else do. I'm sure it's been done. I don't think I invented it, but it, where you do a lap bevel and a rib bevel on the back. Done that twice, and one of the builds I'm starting shortly, I think we'll do it again. And then just like some of the bevels I do I did a really cool bevel on the newest maple guitar, on the Venetian cutaway. I ran a bevel all the way around the whole Venetian curve on the front, and it's kind of a striking look that I've never seen done. So I just kind of push little, aesthetic details and comfort details. I'm always trying to make a really comfortable guitar, still making it look nice. I don't want a guitar that is just comfortable and looks like it just is covered with baby bumpers or something.
Do you have luthiers who you like? Do you have some hero luthiers out there that you really admire in terms of design and style and sound and everything?
It's kind of weird. It's such a friendly bunch of people and so easy to just be around that I kind of admire the whole group in general. Probably, I actually admire a lot of the archtop folks. So I would like to kind of break into that a little bit on my short list now.
Because it's not hard enough to build a flat top guitar.
No, you got to make it even harder. So I like Tyler Wells. I think his lines and curves and stuff are some of the most incredible shapes I've ever seen on guitars. There's just something so clean and natural about the way he flows his ports in and out and stuff. And I feel like all his guitars look a little different from the last one and just progressively more deep. So that's why I saw his guitars and I was just like mind blown.
It's pretty incredible to see those guitars. They're like sculptures, but they're just perfect.
Yeah, they're incredible. Yeah, him and Megan are always just putting out some of the coolest things. They talk about the dynamic duo of those two.
I know. No, you have almost every guitar I've seen of yours has these like really stunning woods. Have you just built up in the relatively short span a giant wood pile?
No, I'm real careful about that. I don't think it's a terrible idea necessarily to hoard wood. It seems like it holds its value pretty well. But I don't really just like this pile of wood staring at me all the time, telling me, take care of me, make sure my humidity's right, and build with me. So I try to, try not to have any more than 6 or 7 guitars with a wood laying around at any given time. I try to just...
It's minimalism. Wow.
Yes. I have a lot of nice sets right now. Some exciting and some all over the place kind of stuff where I have a set of sycamore that is just insane. The amount of figuring and weird, I don't know, it's almost like spalted sycamore and stuff just over the top. And then I have beautiful sets of walnut and I have 2 sets of ancient oak burnt in my pocket, that 7,000-year-old oak from somewhere in England. It's dark gray with really cool patterning. That's one of the ones I'm going to start on here shortly. Just absolutely stunning.
Are most of these guitars built on spec, or do you have customers calling and commissioning things, or is it kind of a mix of both?
Both. I'm more spec than commissions at this point, but I'm hoping someday to have that be the other way around, at least for now. Be nice to build more spec more commissions and less spec, because you end up with a lot of money caught up in guitars when you're sitting on a whole bunch of spec guitars.
Yeah, what is the life of a aspiring or younger luthier like? Like, you're building guitars. How many a month? You're probably building one every 2 months? What's going on here?
I'm too much of a perfectionist to be back.
Okay.
My hope is to get up to doing 5 or 6 a year, but now I'm not. If I can get 3 or 4 out, that's darn fine.
Yeah.
It's just because they're so fancy and all those bevels and stuff add days and days and days of work to a standard build.
Yeah.
Myself not to put at least an arm bevel and a rib bevel on most of them or whatever.
How many models do you have now?
I really only have my GA and my Parlor, and I've built a couple of Joel's shape double O's. But I'm going to start One of these builds I'm going to start in the next couple of weeks is going to be a small jumbo, and I probably will come up with my own double O shape. I don't know if I'll make one yet. I might just do another GA and a jumbo for this next, unless I do 3. I usually build in pairs, but I'm thinking about trying to do 3 at a time.
Okay.
The problem is I'm not a little, I can be quite ADHD, and I don't want to put the wrong purfling on the wrong guitar because I got, save myself grief. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself yet. I'm still working on getting my process where it's, just do this. So sometimes I get where I'm like, oh, I go off on this side track, and then I'm like, well, that just set me back. It would have been a lot easier to do that after I do this instead of before and that kind of stuff. So,
do you have other luthiers besides Joel you're connected with and kind of hit them up for advice or whatever?
Yeah, I hang out with the Spokane Luthiers group that meets up once a month, and I try to go every month. I had a couple months there in a row where it didn't work out, but in general, I'm there, and that's kind of fun because they really all are enamored with my guitars, which makes it's kind of fun to just be able to break into a like that, and people are like, "Man, you're making some pretty sick guitars." That's been inspiring, and kind of keeps me going sometimes. But it is a hard business to break into. It's hard to get people to pony up for your guitars. That's the part that seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, how are people finding you? I've been to at least a couple guitar shows.
Yeah, I've gone to as many as I can basically go to. I've been wanting to break into more, but it just hasn't. I really would like to go to Artisan. It'd be Woodstock would have been a blast. I don't know if it's ever going to happen again or not, but if it does, I would like to. I love New York, so
yeah.
But I've been to Vancouver, Victoria, a couple times. Yeah. 2 years in a row, but I've only been showing my guitars for just a little over 2 years. So if I would have gone to this year's Fretboard Summit, it would have been my first third year show, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been showing just a little over 2. This is the beginning of my third year. The next LeConner show would be my third LeConner show.
It's early days for you.
Yeah. And it's just, you just got to keep plugging away. And it's funny, like that I still have that dark parlor. It's bizarre to me that guitar is still in my possession. It's almost sold like 4 times than I can count. And then they're like, oh, my significant other says I'm not allowed to buy another guitar or whatever after when the deal's almost cut or whatever. But
yeah,
it's a good showpiece. It draws people across the room like a moth. So it's not a bad guitar to have at a guitar show, but it'd be nice to see it find a home somewhere.
Totally.
Hard to not get attached to it too, where it's like I can't just sit around and play on it. I fall in love with it and it will never go anywhere.
Has working on guitars with this sort of focus over the last few years like forced you to be like, I'm gonna be a good guitarist? Like,
well, not playing. That's the thing, and I seem to still have that lack of any natural ability on a guitar.
There's a lot of us like that.
Yeah, and I've never pursued any lessons since I was a kid either. I pick stuff up fast. People teach me a riff, and I'll be able to pick it up in 10 minutes, and then I'll immediately forget it again, something like that. It's just, and I have a real massive stage fright, kind of. So I don't know if I would ever be able to play in front of a crowd. I mean, I have a lot of stage fright just sitting here talking to you one-on-one.
Oh, you're doing great. Don't worry about it.
So I do all right at my tables usually for whatever reason. When I'm at a show, I feel like and that was a funny thing too. I mean, like LeConner, my table was just a madhouse the whole time, which was nice. It's nice to be busy and just be always engaging with people. But for whatever reason, people just don't necessarily walk off with the guitars. They play them and play them and play them, and then they're like. But that's not always the case, though. I my very first LeConner show, I had somebody just drop the money on the table and walk off. And I was like, oh my gosh,
That's amazing.
at the price point that I had set. And I'm not like giving away my guitars either. I don't see any point in that.
Yeah.
It's too much work to just take. You can't use all your guitars as loss leaders and stay above water, I guess.
Are you a super social media guy? It seems like that's a big part of selling guitars these days.
No, I think I'm actually probably anaphylactically allergic. That's another one of my downfalls, I would say. I really need to hire a social media director.
I'm sure someone's out there who does that for a variety of luthiers.
Yeah, maybe. I'd like to hear from the one that maybe we could do something in trade.
Yeah. So we're talking at the end of September here, 2024. What's the rest of the year look like for you?
I think I need to get in shape. So I think I'm going to pick up a part-time job teaching snowboarding up at Mount Spokane. Hopefully they'll take me on. And I've been snowboarding for 40 years. That's my favorite sport and pastime.
40 years. That's like when the sport was finally allowed at ski resorts.
Oh yeah. I was in Alaska back then. This would have been when I was around 12. And I had to get a picture ID and take a test to be allowed to snowboard at Alyeska. I didn't think, back then to keep it. At some point I threw it in the trash when I was probably in my late teens or whatever, but I sure wish I still had my snowboarding license.
Yeah.
But, you can see my first board. I think you can.
What is it?
It's a bar foot.
Okay.
I can't zoom in on myself, but
that's okay.
That avalanche kick with the blue is my number 2 snowboard. So those are my first 2 snowboards are hanging on the wall, and they're both in riding shape, especially the bar foot. Every once in a while, like retro days, I'll take the old Woody out and ride it. It rides really good. But I don't have to ride in my old, back in the day, I didn't know there were different size bindings, and it was pre-snowboard boots.
Yeah.
Sorels wouldn't fit in my bindings. I have size 10 back then, probably 10 and a half feet. And so I had to wear Wolverines, which are like cowboy winter boots with pointy toes. And I used to get horrible ingrown toenails every season just from pushing my toes together so violently. And I had to cut down the tip of the boot all the way to the end. So I just had to slash down the middle of the boot on top to get more room in the boot. And then I just would duct tape over it to keep the snow out.
You have been tinkering for a long time.
Oh yeah. I have some cool inventions I need to roll out too. I have a really cool guitar body holder that I really haven't shown to anyone, that I should probably start rolling out to other people, because I think it would help out a lot of luthiers. I invented a new kind of clamping table for using the bow style clamps like that. That makes it's a lot simpler than everyone else's design, and that it can be folded up and put away for your weekend warrior type luthier. And it also has the ability to be tightened on the fly. So if you decide that your compression on the bow is not as hard as you want to be pushing, you can just make the whole thing go and very easily add more clamping power. I'm always coming up with came up with an invention to trim the ends of the frets when you're trying to get the little tang on the frets. That just simplifies that process and makes it a little less, willy-nilly, I guess would be. So I'm always innovating, but I do everything. I don't just, I'm a tinkerer, and then I'm also I fix things. Joel loved it when I started apprenticing, because the first thing I started doing was fixing all the tools, changing bearings and calibrating stuff and changing stuff that was worn out. And so he was real thrilled to have me, because that's not really his thing.
Do you work on old guitars too?
Not so much. I mean, I'm not really qualified in that. I just haven't trained at all. So I'm little bit. And people have been happy with the work I've done, but I'm not really diving into the repair market so much. But it's just mostly because I have no formal training in it, and I don't want to mess up somebody's guitar.
And in terms of your shop, I can only see one corner of it. Is it pretty much all like hand tools, or do you use CNC for anything?
I use, excuse me, any tool that I can use that makes sense. I do use CNC, and I use it when it makes sense. It's nice for doing inlay work and cutting out inlays that drop in and that kind of stuff. And I do use it for my headstock now, just to get way greater accuracy than any other way you could drill your holes for your tuners and that kind of stuff. But I do it all myself. I taught myself how to run the machine and lay out but I was a computer nerd before I was teaching online and all that stuff. I was a computer tech for a long time.
Yeah.
So that was an easy transition to learn how to teach a robot to do what you wanted to do.
Well, I see all these tools and I see the snowboards. Have you tried to build a snowboard yet?
No, I've thought about it, but there's a lot of guys out there that are really good at that. And a lot of them are right here local. I tend to ride, nowadays I ride all Mervin boards, so I'm my last favorite. The board I rode for the last 10 years was a GNU. And now I'm riding Luthier. I'm riding Orca. It's my main board, and then my backup board is still my GNU. And they're made up in Bellingham.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to try to reinvent the wheel with that. They do such a darn good job.
Totally. I totally agree. Well, I am a skier. Hopefully one day we can go ride together. That would be fun. And Tyson, like you're 10 guitars in, handful of years, like, are you still love it? Or are you like, why did I do this?
Well, it's a mix of, it's like when I'm building, I'm in my zone, and I'm loving just seeing my hands work like they're supposed to, and the woods do what the woods are supposed to do. And just having that ability and that knack for making all those things come together and have the sound and aesthetic that people are looking for. And I've been either I've just been lucky or I have a knack for it, but my guitars tend to have really good sound. Either a lot of really high up people are blowing me a lot of smoke, or my guitars sound pretty all right. And
yeah, they're great. Keep it up, please. Don't leave. We need you.
Oh, that's inspiring too. And I do it mostly just by gumption and being like, you can kind of feel when the wood wants to do what the wood wants to do. I haven't, dived down that road of using all kinds of, electronic testing equipment to tell me what my guitars are doing or not doing. I just kind of follow the wood. And so far that technique has worked for me.
We've talked about shows. Is there a store where people can check out any of your guitars, or do they just need to find you?
Finding me is the best way. I may be putting some stuff in some stores too soon. I've been displaying my guitars at a fancy art studio in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh.
But it sounds like they're going to come home for a while here.
Okay.
So, but they were well received, and they definitely fit into a gallery kind of. I know there's this whole thing about whether or not guitars are art or.
Yours are. Some aren't.
I think they can be both, and I guess that's where my guitars kind of fall in is they can sound good and look and feel good all at the same time, and that's kind of that's what I shoot for.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely make a decent effort at it.
Well, Tyson, I'm going to include links to your Instagram that you begrudgingly still post on, but we're happy you do, and your website, and folks should reach out to you. And I can't thank you enough for your time.
I really appreciate it. I hope I gave you something that people enjoy listening to. And
I'm just glad your kid's doing okay, but I'm also glad you got into the guitar racket.
Yeah, and we'll just keep on going. My plan's to make it back to the Fretboard Summit next year.
Please, open invite. love to see it again.
But I'm excited to get there again, and that's a fun show, man. And Chicago is just an absolute blast. I'd go every year if I could afford it.
Thank you. Well, I will see you on the slopes, I guess.
Yeah, let's get that planned out.
All right, that was my conversation with Tyson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, 2 favors. Follow Tyson on Instagram. Second favor, leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find the show, helps people learn about all of our podcast offerings. It's simple. It takes about 5 seconds, and it means the world to me. Till next time.